must have been a beautiful baby. Were you?
Staggeringly ugly.
Were you really?
Deeply, deeply ugly.
When did you first become beautiful?
I don't know that I feel that beautiful now.
When you were younger, you were, I mean, you were 16 or so, you were gorgeous. You still are.
Certainly didn't feel gorgeous then.
Didn't you?
No.
Why was that?
Why was that? I don't know that you do when you're 16. I think you can be the most beautiful person in the world and not know.
Well, tell us a story about how you became a model. It's a fascinating story.
I had a sort of speedy exit from school and didn't quite know what I was going to do, and told my parents that I wanted to go off and study history of art in Florence. And it was because I had sort of visions of wandering through Florence, you know, carrying a basket of ripe figs and going out with some handsome Italian man. It wasn't really based in a great passion for history of art. And my mother was saying, no, this is a really bad idea, and actually you can go to secretarial school. So that's where we were. I said, no, please don't make me do that. And she went one way, I went another way. I was on Elizabeth Street in London and crying very self-indulgently on the doorstep. And a taxi pulled up. Out of the taxi emerged this sort of vision in a galleon hat and a corset and these sort of sailor trousers, carrying lots of bags and swearing and dropping them. And I sort of looked up at her and I thought, I don't know who that is, but I want to be her friend. And she sort of came towards me and I said, do you need help with your bags? And she said, yes, you're actually sitting on my doorstep. And I said, terribly sorry. And she said, why are you crying? And I said, because my mother is making me go to secretarial school and I don't know what I'm going to do. And she said, do you want to be a model? And I said, yes! Because anything at that stage was preferable. And so we went upstairs, had a cup of tea, had a chat. She said, let's go and find your mum and tell her. We went and found my mum, who was not best pleased. And that was that.
Your mum wrote one, I remember an article she wrote, where she said she was jealous of you at that time.
Yeah, I think it wasn't the happiest period in her life, and I think that it certainly had an impact on her because she wasn't feeling at her most secure, and she wasn't very happy.
You had an extraordinary childhood, really, and part of it's reflected in this book that you've written now, called Flame of the Grown-Ups.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's about a girl, and it's a relationship with her mother, and the mother is a fairly sort of charismatic, very charismatic, but also a very difficult woman with lots of problems, and in many ways that mirrors your childhood, doesn't it?
I think there's certainly a correlation between the two.
I knew your mum, I knew your granddad, I knew your granny. I've interviewed them all, actually. This makes me feel ancient, I did tell you. The point is that I wondered why, when reading, and it's a very good read again, it's an interesting read, an interesting relationship between mother and daughter. But why you wouldn't rather have written an autobiography, say? Because the life story is fascinating, you know, the background you came from and the relationship you had with your mum.
I think I'm too young to write an autobiography. I don't think I've done enough. And secondly, I like the distance that fiction gives. And I think that through fiction, you know, there's a lot more objectivity and distance from your subject matter. And in an autobiography, perhaps.
Has your mum read the book?
Yes, she has.
And what was her reaction?
She was totally generous about it and called me, and it makes me get weepy because she called me and just said, I'm so proud of you.
Okay. Well, she wrote as well, but I mean,
yes.
Spectacular, of course. Your granddad was a great writer, Roald Dahl. Was he a significant figure in your young life?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, my mum was very young when she had me, so we spent a lot of time at their house.
She was 19, your mum, wasn't she?
Yeah. You know, and I grew up sort of being one of many children in that house. What was
he like with kids? I mean, it's spectacular, wrote brilliantly for children, but what was he like in reality with them?
Very good, unless they were boring. I didn't have a lot of time for boring children.
Didn't he?
No.
Did he dismiss them?
He just didn't like sort of bland. A classic hymn story was if you came home from school and brought a friend with you for tea, and you know, he'd say, now what would you like for tea? And the friend would say, oh, I don't mind. And he'd say, no, you must mind. It's very, very important to mind. And that was his whole sort of ethos with children. And adults, actually.
He was a very remarkable man. I remember I interviewed him and he told me about one of his children, a son was it, who was injured in the pushchair, had a brain injury.
Yes.
And he developed, invented
The shunt.
the tap. An extraordinary thing when you think about it. I mean, he was a very remarkable human being, wasn't he?
But he was, I think, probably one of the most curious people I've ever come across. You know, he wanted to know what made everything tick, be it a person, you know, an inanimate object. That was who he was.
When he died, of course, he was Norwegian. He had this Nordic burial, didn't he?
Yes.
What did that involve?
It involved with surrounding him in his coffin with his favourite things.
Which one?
So, some very, very good bottles of red wine. His snooker cue. Chalk for his snooker cue. Packet of cigarettes. What else did he have in there?
Chocolate.
So much chocolate.
Yeah. He was a chocoholic, wasn't he?
Chocolate at the end of every meal. Raised on it. Not surprising I got fat when I was a teenager, really.
Yeah. There's been one you, going back to the modelling stage that you did. I mean, you were adopted by the media as the sort of the larger woman, the sort of triumph for the larger woman. Did that sit easily with you, or what?
I think I was quite embarrassed by it.
With?
Because it was, you know, it was something, because it wasn't something that I had aspired to do, it was something that I fell into. I sort of, again, as one does at 18, I just wanted to be like everyone else, you know, and to be singled out for that reason was quite an odd, you know, sort of embarrassing thing.
But it must have also been, I mean, there you were, because, I mean, there were all these stick-thin people around you, and you were this very voluptuous girl.
Bouncing around eating a croissant.
Yes, and you must have been all the stuff that they don't do. And I would imagine, too, wouldn't it? I mean, the practical problem would have been how do you get close to fit you?
Well, therein lay the rub.
What?
They were never closed to fit me.
Well, they were not?
No.
So how do you manage it? On a catwalk? You walk down there with all the... So what was happening?
Well, I mean, with that,
you're
with a catwalk, you're having clothes made for you.
I see, but they say no photo shoot.
But photo shoot was tricky. Often not photographed with that many clothes on. That kind of turned into a bit of a pattern.
What did?
Not being photographed with that many clothes on.
Spectacular, of course, with that ad that you did. It was the opium ad, wasn't it? That was extraordinary. I mean, that had the effect. I mean, there were stories of people driving off the motorway and things like that. Because I don't know if you remember it, but it showed Sophie actually on backwards like a...
Would you like to do that again?
Well, you know those Alan Jones tables, you know, the naked women, but she was naked. And she was, I can't do it properly, I could in my youth, but you have to go right the way back, don't you? And you come in white powder, as I recall. See, I did see it. I studied it closely. But I mean, I mean, that got you kind of, it got banned in France, of all places. Banned in France.
A bit much being banned in France.
I think it's absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what about that? How did that suit you or not?
It was something I was very proud to be a part of. You know, it was a sort of, it was quite an iconic advertising campaign because of the creative team that were behind it, and it was just, you know, hopefully it's something I can show my grandchildren.
I mean, are you now a full-time writer? Is that what you want to be?
I think, hopefully.
Will you still continue modelling?
I haven't been doing so much. I mean, it's sort of special projects here and there. I did a Vogue cover this month.
Yes, I saw that. Nice cover.
Thank you.